You may think that the way you start your morning has little impact on your health. But the truth is shocking. According to Japan's oldest practicing doctor, certain morning habits that many seniors believe are harmless can actually triple the risk of suffering a stroke after the age of 60. These are not exotic or unusual behaviors. They are common routines like skipping breakfast, reaching for a cigarette or alcohol early in the day, or suddenly pushing your body too hard when you first wake up. I have seen patients who seemed perfectly fine at sunrise collapse before noon simply because of the way they began their day. Stroke is already the leading cause of disability among older adults, and once it strikes, recovery is uncertain and independence is often lost forever. Yet the tragedy is that many strokes are not random. They are triggered by patterns of daily living that quietly strain the heart, thicken the blood, and destabilize the brain circulation until one morning the system fails. In this video, I will reveal 4 dangerous morning habits that dramatically increase stroke risk after 60. And I will also show you the earliest warning signs that your brain may already be under attack. Knowing these signs can give you the precious minutes needed to call for help before it is too late. Before we begin, if you have not subscribed yet, I recommend you hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss another health tip made just for you. If you find this information valuable, type 1 in the comments. If not, type 0 so I know how to make better content for you. Part 1. Skipping breakfast, the silent blood pressure trigger. Many seniors believe that skipping breakfast is a harmless habit, perhaps even a way to cut calories or save time in the morning. Some think that after a lifetime of eating 3 meals a day, missing one meal is no big deal. But the truth is that regularly skipping breakfast quietly places your body under stress. And for those over 60, this stress can trigger dangerous changes in blood pressure, blood sugar, and blood viscosity that set the stage for a stroke. Let me explain why. When you wake up in the morning, your body has already been fasting for 6 to 8 hours. During this time, your blood sugar levels naturally fall, and your brain and muscles are relying on stored energy. For a younger person, the body can often compensate more easily, but for an older adult, the regulatory systems are slower and less efficient. If you then choose to skip breakfast, the period of fasting is extended, pushing your body into a state of stress. This activates the sympathetic nervous system, the same system responsible for the fight-or-flight response, which in turn releases stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. These hormones raise your blood pressure and increase your heart rate. For someone with aging blood vessels that are already stiff and fragile, this extra pressure can be enough to cause a vessel to rupture or a clot to dislodge, leading to a stroke. Another hidden danger of skipping breakfast is how it affects your blood sugar. Older adults often struggle with insulin resistance, which means their bodies cannot regulate glucose as smoothly. When you prolong fasting, blood sugar drops too low, creating a condition called hypoglycemia. The brain is particularly vulnerable to this because it depends almost entirely on glucose for energy. A sudden dip can cause dizziness, blurred vision, or even fainting. But what is more dangerous is what happens next. When you finally eat later in the day, the body tends to overcompensate, leading to sharp spikes in blood sugar. These roller coaster swings between low and high glucose damage blood vessels over time and increase the risk of clot formation, a direct pathway to ischemic stroke. You may think the solution is simple, just eat later, but research has shown that timing matters as much as content. A Japanese study that followed over 80,000 adults found that those who regularly skipped breakfast had a significantly higher risk of stroke, particularly cerebral hemorrhage, compared to those who ate a morning meal. The risk was especially high in older adults and women. The explanation lies in the morning hours themselves. Studies show that blood pressure tends to peak in the early morning, just after waking up. Doctors call this the morning surge, and it is one of the most dangerous times of day for stroke. If you add the stress of fasting on top of this natural surge, you magnify the pressure on already delicate arteries. This is why so many strokes and heart attacks occur in the morning. Let us consider a real example. I once treated a 65-year-old man who had always skipped breakfast because he believed it helped him control his weight. He worked in an office, often starting the day with only coffee. One morning, while preparing to leave for work, he suddenly collapsed. His wife found him on the kitchen floor, unable to move his right arm and slurring his speech. At the hospital, imaging confirmed a large ischemic stroke caused by a clot that had blocked a major artery in his brain. His blood pressure had surged to dangerously high levels that morning. And without the stabilizing effect of food, his system could not cope. He survived, but was left with permanent weakness on one side of his body. His story is not unique. Across Asia and around the world, breakfast skipping is common, and it silently contributes to preventable strokes every single day. Beyond blood pressure and sugar, skipping breakfast also affects blood viscosity, or thickness, overnight. As you sleep, your body loses water through breathing and perspiration. You wake up slightly dehydrated, and your blood is already more concentrated than usual. If you do not drink water or eat in the morning, this state persists, making the blood thicker and more prone to clotting. For an older person with narrowed arteries from years of cholesterol buildup, this is the perfect environment for a stroke. A small clot can easily lodge in a brain vessel and block blood flow. Some people argue that intermittent fasting, which often involves skipping breakfast, has health benefits, and it is true that in younger, healthier populations, fasting can promote weight loss and improve metabolic health. But for seniors, especially those over 60 with hypertension, diabetes, or vascular disease, the risks far outweigh the benefits. Your brain and heart need steady fuel and hydration in the morning to face the natural stresses of the day. Depriving them only adds fuel to the fire. So what is the safe alternative? The solution is not to eat a heavy, greasy breakfast, but rather a balanced one that supports stable blood pressure and glucose. Foods rich in whole grains, fruits, and protein provide steady energy without spiking blood sugar. A bowl of oatmeal with berries, a slice of whole grain toast with an egg, or even a banana with yogurt are far better than coffee alone. Just as important is hydration. A glass of water upon waking helps thin the blood, lower viscosity, and reduce the risk of clotting. Adding too much salt, sugar, or processed foods defeats the purpose. So, simplicity is key. Families can play a role here too. Encourage older relatives not to skip breakfast. Remind them that eating something small in the morning is not about appetite but about protection. Even if they do not feel hungry, a light meal and some water can prevent catastrophic consequences later in the day. Caregivers should pay attention if an elderly parent consistently avoids breakfast, as this could silently increase their risk of stroke. The lesson is clear. Skipping breakfast is not harmless, especially after 60. It is a silent blood pressure trigger, a destabilizer of blood sugar, and a driver of thickened blood, all of which combine to triple the risk of stroke in the vulnerable morning hours. It may feel convenient or even healthy to avoid food early in the day, but for the aging brain and heart, that choice can be fatal. Protect yourself by starting the day with nourishment and hydration, not emptiness and stress. If this reality has surprised you, wait until you hear about the next part, where I will reveal why smoking or drinking alcohol in the morning acts like a time bomb inside your blood vessels, pushing you closer to a deadly stroke with every puff or sip. Part 2. Morning smoking and alcohol, the vascular time bomb. Of all the habits that quietly destroy the blood vessels of older adults, few are as damaging as reaching for a cigarette or a glass of alcohol early in the morning. Many seniors convince themselves that one cigarette upon waking helps them relax, or that a small shot of liquor warms the body and boosts circulation. But the truth is that smoking or drinking in the morning is like setting off a time bomb inside your arteries. These behaviors dramatically increase stress on the cardiovascular system, especially after the age of 60, and they can trigger a stroke when your body is least prepared to handle it. Let us start with smoking. Overnight, while you sleep, your body rests and detoxifies. But when you wake, your blood pressure naturally rises as part of what doctors call the morning surge. This is when your vessels are already under tension. If you then inhale cigarette smoke, you flood your body with nicotine and carbon monoxide at the exact moment your circulation is most fragile. Nicotine is a powerful stimulant. It immediately raises heart rate and blood pressure by tightening or constricting the blood vessels. For a 60-year-old with arteries already stiffened by years of high blood pressure or cholesterol buildup, this sudden tightening can reduce blood flow to the brain. Even worse, nicotine increases platelet stickiness, which makes your blood more prone to clot. A sticky clot inside a narrowed artery is a recipe for an ischemic stroke. Carbon monoxide, another byproduct of smoking, is equally deadly. It binds to hemoglobin in red blood cells more tightly than oxygen, reducing the oxygen supply delivered to the brain. The brain, deprived of oxygen even for a few minutes, begins to die. This is why morning smokers often feel lightheaded or dizzy after their first cigarette of the day. That dizziness is not harmless. It is a warning that the brain is struggling to receive adequate oxygen. Studies have consistently shown that the risk of stroke and heart attack is highest in the first hour after smoking. And that risk is even greater when smoking occurs in the early morning during the natural blood pressure surge. Now, consider alcohol. For centuries, in many cultures, people have believed that a morning drink has health benefits, calling it a pick-me-up or even a medicine. Some seniors in Japan and Europe drink small amounts of sake, whiskey, or wine upon waking, believing it helps circulation. But this is a dangerous misconception. Alcohol in the morning enters an empty stomach more quickly, leading to rapid absorption. Blood alcohol levels spike, and the effects on the brain and vessels are more immediate. Alcohol is a depressant that interferes with the balance of blood pressure. Initially, it may cause blood vessels to dilate, lowering pressure slightly, but soon after, the body compensates with a rebound effect, causing blood pressure to rise again. These fluctuations are stressful for aging arteries. In the short term, alcohol can make blood thinner by impairing clotting, but repeated use damages the lining of blood vessels, making them fragile and prone to rupture. For a 65-year-old with hypertension, this fragile state increases the risk of hemorrhagic stroke, where a weakened artery bursts and bleeds into the brain. What makes morning alcohol particularly dangerous is that it combines with natural dehydration from the night. After hours without water, your blood is already thicker. Adding alcohol, which is a diuretic, removes even more fluid from the body, concentrating the blood further. This thick, sticky blood strains the heart and increases the likelihood of clot formation. A small clot traveling to the brain can block an artery within minutes, leaving a patient paralyzed or speechless before breakfast. You might wonder whether small amounts of alcohol are safe. Indeed, some studies suggest that light drinking may have cardiovascular benefits in younger or middle-aged adults. But for seniors, especially those with hypertension, diabetes, or prior strokes, even small morning doses can tip the balance toward catastrophe. The American Heart Association and Japanese health authorities both warn that alcohol use in older adults significantly increases stroke risk, particularly hemorrhagic stroke. Let us look at a real case. A 70-year-old woman in Tokyo had a routine of drinking a small glass of sake each morning, a tradition passed down from her parents. One winter morning, after her usual drink, she suddenly felt weakness on one side and collapsed. At the hospital, scans showed a massive intracerebral hemorrhage. She had no history of heavy drinking, but the combination of morning alcohol, high blood pressure, and cold weather had caused a fragile artery in her brain to rupture. She died within hours. Her family, shocked, admitted they had always thought her morning drink was harmless. This tragic story is not rare. Morning drinking is a cultural habit in some regions, but it is one that carries deadly risks. Smoking and alcohol also interact dangerously with medications, another common issue in older adults. Many seniors take blood pressure pills, blood thinners, or diabetes medications. Smoking reduces the effectiveness of some drugs, making blood pressure harder to control. Alcohol, on the other hand, can intensify the side effects of medications, leading to dangerous drops or spikes in blood pressure. Together, these interactions create unstable conditions in the body that make stroke more likely. There is also the hidden danger of routine. Morning habits are deeply ingrained, and because they are repeated daily, the damage accumulates silently over years. A cigarette each morning constricts the arteries thousands of times over a decade. A glass of alcohol each morning dehydrates and destabilizes circulation day after day. By the time symptoms appear, the brain and vessels may already be too damaged to recover. Stroke, when it comes, is simply the final straw. The good news is that the damage is not irreversible if action is taken early. Quitting smoking, even after decades, reduces the risk of stroke significantly within just a few years. The arteries begin to relax, blood pressure stabilizes, and oxygen delivery improves. Quitting in your 60s or 70s is not too late. In fact, it is often life-saving. The same is true for alcohol. Reducing or eliminating morning drinking lowers blood pressure and gives the vessels a chance to repair. Hydration with water instead of alcohol in the morning thins the blood naturally and supports circulation. Replacing harmful habits with safer ones is key. Instead of lighting a cigarette, drink a glass of warm water or tea to ease into the day. Instead of alcohol, choose a light breakfast with whole grains and fruit. If relaxation is what you seek, gentle breathing exercises or stretching can calm the nervous system without damaging the vessels. Families can play an important role. If you see an older parent or relative continuing these morning habits, do not dismiss them as harmless traditions. Talk about the risks openly. Share stories and information. Encourage small changes. Even reducing smoking or alcohol step by step can make a real difference. The lesson is clear. Morning smoking and drinking are not harmless routines. They are vascular time bombs, waiting to detonate inside the arteries of older adults. Combined with the natural morning blood pressure surge and the vulnerability of aging vessels, they can trigger a fatal stroke without warning. Protecting yourself means making the choice to break these habits now, before it is too late. If this truth has shocked you, wait until you hear about the next part, where I will explain why cold showers and sudden exertion in the morning can shock the aging heart and brain, creating another hidden pathway to stroke. Part 3. Cold showers and sudden exertion, shocks to the aging heart. Many seniors believe that starting the day with a cold shower or jumping immediately into vigorous exercise is a way to build toughness, improve circulation, or wake up the body. For decades, such habits have been praised in popular culture, with stories of athletes, monks, or even celebrities who credit cold water or early workouts for their vitality. But what is often ignored is the unique physiology of older adults. After the age of 60, the cardiovascular system is not as flexible or resilient as it once was. What may be refreshing for a 20-year-old can become a life-threatening shock for someone in their 60s or 70s. Cold showers and sudden exertion in the morning can push the heart and blood vessels into crisis, leading to strokes, heart attacks, or sudden death. To understand why, we must first consider what happens in the body upon waking. During sleep, metabolism slows, body temperature drops slightly, and the heart rate decreases. When you wake up, your body is in a delicate transition, moving from rest to activity. Blood pressure naturally surges in the morning as part of the circadian rhythm. For older adults with stiffer arteries and less flexible hearts, this surge already represents a stress point. If you then add a cold shower, you amplify the stress dramatically. Cold water exposure triggers what is known as the cold shock response. When icy water touches the skin, nerve endings immediately send signals to the brain, which in turn activates the sympathetic nervous system. This system releases adrenaline, causing rapid breathing, gasping, and a sharp rise in heart rate and blood pressure. For a young, healthy body, this may be tolerated. But in an older adult with narrowed arteries or hidden heart disease, the sudden spike can cause an artery in the brain to burst, resulting in a hemorrhagic stroke. Alternatively, the rise in blood pressure can dislodge a plaque, sending a clot to the brain and causing an ischemic stroke. Researchers in Japan and Scandinavia have studied the effects of cold water immersion. Since both cultures have traditions of cold bathing, they found that sudden exposure to cold increases the risk of arrhythmias or dangerous irregular heart rhythms. Particularly in people over 60, an arrhythmia can stop the heart from pumping effectively, leading to sudden cardiac arrest. In fact, many unexplained bathroom deaths among the elderly in winter are believed to be linked to cold water shock, combined with high morning blood pressure. Now, let us consider sudden exertion. Many seniors believe that starting the day with push-ups, jogging, or heavy chores is a good way to stay strong. Exercise is indeed vital for health, but the timing and intensity matter greatly. When an older adult moves abruptly from rest to high effort in the morning, the heart, still adjusting from the night's slower pace, is forced to pump harder and faster before it is ready. This sudden demand for oxygen can overwhelm a weakened heart muscle, triggering angina or even a heart attack. At the same time, blood pressure spikes further, stressing delicate brain vessels. For someone with silent vascular disease, the result can be catastrophic. I recall the case of a 68-year-old man who had always prided himself on his discipline. Each morning, without fail, he would rise at 5 a.m. and pour a bucket of cold water over his head before performing 100 push-ups. He believed this routine kept him young. But one winter morning, he collapsed in his yard. By the time he was brought to the hospital, he had suffered a massive stroke. Imaging showed that a clot had blocked one of the major arteries in his brain, most likely dislodged by the morning surge in blood pressure, amplified by his extreme routine. He survived, but with severe disability, unable to walk or speak clearly again. His family, devastated, admitted they had always thought his ritual was admirable. In reality, it had been a ticking time bomb. It is not just extreme routines that are dangerous. Even moderate sudden exertion, like rushing to carry heavy objects, running upstairs, or shoveling snow in cold weather, can be deadly for seniors. Emergency departments in colder countries report spikes in heart attacks and strokes in the morning after snowstorms. When older men go outside to shovel snow, the combination of cold air, physical strain, and morning blood pressure surge proves too much for the aging cardiovascular system. The science supports these observations. A study published in the journal Circulation found that the risk of stroke and heart attack peaks in the morning hours between 6 and 10 a.m. The body's natural rhythm raises clotting factors and blood pressure during this time, creating fertile ground for vascular events. Adding cold stress or sudden exertion only increases the odds. For older adults, this combination can be fatal. What then should seniors do instead? The answer is moderation and gradual adaptation. If you enjoy cold water, do not shock your body first thing in the morning. Instead, consider using lukewarm water to wash first. Then gradually decrease the temperature. Let your body adapt slowly. If you want to exercise in the morning, begin with gentle movements like stretching, walking, or deep breathing to ease your heart and vessels into activity. Give yourself at least 15 to 20 minutes after waking before doing anything strenuous, allowing your body to stabilize. Hydrate first, because overnight dehydration makes blood thicker and harder to pump. Warm environments also make a difference. In Japan, where many elderly people die in the bathroom during winter, public health campaigns now recommend heating the bathroom before bathing to reduce sudden temperature changes. Families should encourage elderly relatives to avoid extreme routines, no matter how proud or disciplined they feel about them. What seems like strength can, in fact, be dangerous rigidity. Some seniors argue that they have done these routines for years without harm. But the aging process changes the body gradually. What was safe at 50 may no longer be safe at 70. Arteries harden, the heart weakens, and tolerance decreases. Stroke or cardiac arrest often appears suddenly, but it is the result of years of hidden changes colliding with a dangerous trigger. Morning cold exposure and exertion are among the most powerful of those triggers. The message is not that you should avoid exercise or stop bathing. On the contrary, hygiene and physical activity are essential. The key is how and when you do them. Choose warm showers, not icy ones, especially in winter. Choose gentle morning walks, not sprints or heavy lifting. Save vigorous workouts for later in the day. When your body is fully awake, hydrated, and warmed, by respecting your body's natural rhythms, you reduce the risk of shock to the heart and brain. Families and caregivers can help by observing routines and gently guiding older adults towards safer habits. Instead of praising extreme discipline, praise consistency and balance. Remind them that the goal of health is not toughness, but longevity. Not endurance of discomfort, but prevention of sudden collapse. The lesson is clear. Cold showers and sudden exertion may seem like signs of vitality, but for seniors, they are shocks to the aging heart and brain. Combined with the morning blood pressure surge, dehydration, and fragile vessels, they can trigger strokes and heart attacks without warning. Protecting yourself means choosing moderation, warmth, and gradual activity. Do not gamble with your life in the name of toughness. If this warning has made you reconsider your routines, stay with me for the next part, where I will reveal how something as simple as ignoring hydration in the morning thickens your blood and silently increases your risk of stroke. Part 4. Ignoring hydration. How morning dehydration thickens the blood. Among all the hidden risks that seniors face in the morning, few are as underestimated as dehydration. It seems almost trivial. You wake up, you feel fine, and you go about your morning without a sip of water. Yet inside your body, something dangerous is happening. Overnight, while you sleep, your body loses fluid through breathing, sweating, and natural processes. By morning, even if you do not feel thirsty, you are already mildly dehydrated. For a person over 60, this state is not harmless. Ignoring hydration in the morning thickens the blood, increases the load on the heart, and creates the perfect environment for a clot to form and travel to the brain. This is why skipping water in the morning is not a small mistake, but a habit that can silently increase your risk of stroke. Let us start with what dehydration actually does to the blood. Blood is composed largely of plasma, which is mostly water. When you are well hydrated, plasma keeps blood flowing smoothly through arteries and veins. But when you are dehydrated, the proportion of plasma decreases, making the blood thicker, or more viscous. Thick blood does not flow as easily, and the heart has to pump harder to push it through narrowed arteries. For an older adult with stiff, calcified vessels, this increased strain can be too much. A thick clot can form, and if it travels to the brain, an ischemic stroke occurs. Studies confirm this risk. Researchers in Europe found that dehydration at hospital admission doubled the risk of poor outcomes in stroke patients. Another study showed that patients who were dehydrated at the time of a stroke had larger brain injuries and worse recoveries. The connection is simple. Dehydration makes blood sticky. Sticky blood clots more easily, and clots block brain arteries. What is often overlooked is that dehydration does not begin at the hospital. It begins in the bedroom. Overnight, every night. When people fail to replace fluids upon waking, the problem worsens with age. Older adults have a reduced sense of thirst. By 60 or 70, the body does not signal dehydration as clearly as it once did. A senior may not feel thirsty in the morning even though their blood is already thick. Add in common medications like diuretics for high blood pressure, which increase fluid loss, and the risk rises further. Many seniors also avoid drinking water before bed because they fear waking up at night to urinate. While understandable, this habit means they go 8 to 10 hours without any fluid intake, waking up dangerously dry. I recall the case of a 72-year-old woman who rarely drank water in the morning. She preferred to wait until lunchtime, believing that tea or soup was enough. One morning, after waking, she suddenly developed weakness in her left arm and struggled to speak. At the hospital, imaging revealed a clot blocking a middle cerebral artery. Blood tests showed she was dehydrated, her blood thicker than normal. The doctors concluded that her long-standing habit of skipping morning hydration had contributed to the conditions that allowed the clot to form. She survived but was left with speech difficulties that changed her life permanently. Her family admitted they had never thought something as simple as water could matter so much. Another hidden effect of dehydration is its impact on blood pressure. When you are dehydrated, the volume of fluid circulating in your body decreases. The heart must pump harder to circulate this smaller volume effectively, often causing fluctuations in pressure. For seniors with fragile vessels, these swings are dangerous. A sudden drop can reduce brain perfusion, causing dizziness or fainting. A rebound rise can burst a weakened artery, causing a hemorrhagic stroke. Either outcome can be devastating. Morning dehydration also interacts with other habits. If you skip breakfast as well as water, you are compounding the risk. Thick blood from dehydration combines with low blood sugar from fasting, stressing the brain doubly. If you smoke or drink alcohol on top of that, the strain multiplies. Each of these habits may seem small on its own, but together they form a deadly chain. This is why so many strokes occur in the morning hours, when all these factors converge. So, what should seniors do to protect themselves? The answer is surprisingly simple. Drink water first thing in the morning. A glass of plain water upon waking replenishes fluid lost overnight, thins the blood, and reduces the risk of clot formation. Warm or room temperature water is best, as very cold water can shock the stomach and cause discomfort. Adding a slice of lemon can improve taste and encourage regular drinking. For those on fluid restrictions due to kidney or heart conditions, consult a doctor. But even in those cases, carefully planned, hydration is essential. Tea and coffee are not enough. While they provide fluid, both contain caffeine, which can act as a mild diuretic, pulling water out of the body. They should complement, not replace, plain water. Alcohol in the morning is the worst choice, as it dehydrates further. Milk or juice can contribute to hydration, but water should always be the foundation. Families can help by creating routines. Place a glass of water by the bedside before going to sleep, so it is ready upon waking. Encourage elderly relatives to drink before brushing their teeth or preparing breakfast. Remind them that thirst is not a reliable guide at their age. Caregivers in nursing homes should ensure patients receive morning hydration as part of standard care, as this simple measure can save lives. Scientific evidence strongly supports hydration as stroke prevention. A study published in Neurology showed that patients with higher hydration levels at the time of stroke had smaller brain lesions and better recovery. Another study in Japan linked morning water drinking with a lower incidence of stroke in older adults. These findings confirm what doctors observe. Daily hydration is a powerful but overlooked defense against vascular disease. Some seniors worry that drinking water in the morning will upset their stomach or make them urinate too frequently. But the solution is moderation. A small glass, about 150 to 200 milliliters, is enough to begin rehydration without discomfort. Over time, the body adapts and frequent urination becomes less of an issue. The benefits for brain and heart far outweigh the inconvenience. Let me share one final story. An 80-year-old man was brought to my clinic by his daughter. He had a history of mild hypertension but was otherwise active. She had noticed that every morning, before breakfast, he looked sluggish and sometimes complained of headaches. I asked about his hydration habits. He admitted he rarely drank water, preferring to wait for tea at mid-morning. I explained the dangers and encouraged a new routine, a glass of water upon waking every day. 3 months later, his daughter reported he was more alert in the mornings. His headaches had reduced, and his blood pressure readings were more stable. A small change had made a measurable difference. The lesson is clear. Ignoring hydration in the morning thickens the blood, stresses the heart, destabilizes blood pressure, and creates the perfect conditions for a stroke. This is not theory. It is biology, confirmed by research in real lives. Water is the simplest, cheapest, and most effective stroke prevention measure available, yet it is the most overlooked. If you are over 60, never begin your day without it. If this truth has opened your eyes, stay with me for the next part, where I will reveal the very first subtle signs of stroke you must never ignore, because recognizing them early can mean the difference between recovery and permanent disability. Part 5. The first subtle signs of stroke you must never ignore. One of the greatest tragedies I witness as a doctor is when patients and their families overlook the earliest warning signs of stroke. They tell themselves it is just fatigue, stress, or a bad night's sleep. They wait, hoping the symptoms will pass. But stroke is not patient, and every hour of delay means more brain cells dying. Recognizing subtle signs can mean the difference between walking out of the hospital on your own 2 feet or spending the rest of your life in a wheelchair. After 60, you must be especially vigilant because the brain is more vulnerable and the window for treatment is narrow. The first sign many people notice is weakness or numbness, often on one side of the body. It may begin subtly, like a tingling in the hand, a feeling that the arm is heavier than usual, or difficulty gripping objects. Some patients describe it as their legs suddenly not listening to them, dragging slightly when they walk. These signs are easy to dismiss, especially if they fade after a few minutes. But even brief episodes of weakness are red flags. Often, what doctors call a transient ischemic attack, or mini stroke. A mini stroke is not harmless. It is the brain's urgent warning that a full stroke may strike soon, sometimes within hours. Another subtle sign is changes in vision. A person may suddenly notice blurred vision in one eye, double vision, or even loss of part of their visual field. For example, they may not see objects on their left side, bumping into furniture, or failing to notice someone standing next to them. These changes can come and go quickly, making them easy to ignore. Yet, vision problems are often the first clue that blood flow to the brain's visual centers is impaired. Speech changes are equally important. You may find yourself slurring words, struggling to express simple sentences, or unable to understand what others are saying. Some describe it as their tongue feeling thick, making their words unclear. Others realize their vocabulary suddenly feels limited, like the right words are locked away. Families often mistake these episodes for fatigue or confusion, but they are among the most critical warning signs of stroke. Headache is another clue. But not just any headache. Stroke-related headaches are often sudden, severe, and different from usual patterns. Patients describe them as explosive, the worst headache of their life, or spreading rapidly without cause. When such pain occurs, particularly with nausea or vision changes, It can indicate bleeding inside the brain. Hemorrhagic strokes are less common than ischemic ones, but they are often more deadly. And headache may be the only early symptom. Balance and coordination changes can also be subtle but dangerous. You may suddenly feel dizzy when standing, stumble without explanation, or be unable to walk in a straight line. Sometimes it feels like the room is spinning. While dizziness has many causes, when it appears suddenly in someone over 60, especially with other signs like slurred speech or weakness, it should never be ignored. Confusion and cognitive changes are another silent warning. A person may suddenly struggle to understand simple instructions, appear lost in familiar places, or seem unusually forgetful. Families may think it is normal aging, but the sudden onset is the key difference. Stroke-related confusion appears abruptly, often within minutes, and signals that the brain's higher functions are being deprived of oxygen. Even more subtle are episodes that last only a few minutes and then disappear. These are mini strokes, or TIAs, and they are among the most dangerous warnings of all. Research shows that up to 1/3 of people who experience a thanks in advance will go on to have a full stroke within days if no treatment is given. The tragedy is that many people dismiss these episodes because the symptoms resolve on their own. They believe everything is fine, when in fact, their brain has just issued a desperate alarm. I remember a 69-year-old man who came to the hospital only after he had collapsed with a massive stroke. His wife later recalled that the week before, he had episodes where his speech slurred for a few minutes and then returned to normal. He also complained of tingling in his hand. They had laughed it off as stress. When the full stroke hit, it left him unable to speak or move his right side permanently. Those earlier episodes had been golden opportunities to prevent the disaster, but they were missed. The FAST method, which stands for face, arm, speech, and time, is one of the simplest tools for recognizing stroke signs. If the face droops on one side, if one arm cannot be raised, if speech is slurred, then it is time to call emergency services immediately. But beyond FAST, there are other subtle signs like vision changes, dizziness, confusion, or severe headache that also demand urgent attention. Seniors and their families must understand that waiting to see if things improve is the worst mistake. Stroke treatments like clot-busting drugs and thrombectomy procedures are only effective within a limited window of a few hours. After that, the damage is often irreversible. Scientific studies support the urgency. One analysis in The Lancet showed that every 15-minute delay in stroke treatment reduces the chance of a good recovery by 5%. Another study found that patients who arrived at the hospital within 1 hour of symptom onset were twice as likely to leave with little or no disability compared to those who arrived later. The evidence is overwhelming. Early recognition and action save lives and independence. Families play a vital role. Often, it is the spouse, child, or caregiver who first notices subtle changes. If your loved one suddenly seems unsteady, speaks strangely, or complains of sudden vision problems, do not dismiss it. Call for help. Even if the symptoms vanish in minutes, the risk is real. An urgent evaluation is needed. Hospitals can perform brain scans, monitor blood flow, and prescribe medications to prevent a larger stroke. Acting on these warnings can prevent lifelong disability. The lesson is clear. Stroke rarely comes without warning. The brain whispers before it screams. Tingling, slurred speech, blurred vision, sudden confusion. These are not signs of aging. They are cries for help. Ignoring them is an invitation to disaster. Recognizing them and acting immediately can save the brain, the body, and the life you love. If this knowledge has given you new awareness, stay with me for the conclusion, where I will bring together all 4 habits and these first warning signs to show you how small changes each morning can protect your brain and why vigilance is the greatest gift you can give yourself after 60. Conclusion: why vigilance each morning can save your brain. After walking through these morning habits and the first subtle signs, I want you to pause and realize something vital. Stroke is not a lightning strike from a clear sky. It is a process, often years in the making, but it delivers its final blow in moments. And those moments often arrive in the quiet of the morning, when your brain and body are most vulnerable. Ignoring breakfast, skipping hydration, rushing to the bathroom without caution, or shocking your body with sudden exertion may seem like small things, but for a person over 60, they can be the final push that triggers a fatal stroke. Your brain, delicate and hungry for oxygen, depends on stable blood flow every second, overnight. When the body is resting, blood pressure drops, hydration declines, and the vessels stiffened by age are under strain. The morning routine either helps restore balance or pushes it further toward collapse. That is why paying attention to these habits is not optional. It is a form of daily protection for your most precious organ. I have seen patients who learned too late. They ignored brief tingling in the arm or slurred speech, assuming it was fatigue. They brushed off dizziness when standing, believing it was age. By the time they sought help, the window for treatment had closed, and the damage was permanent. But I have also seen patients who acted quickly, who recognized the warning signs, called for help, and received treatment in time. Many of them returned to their lives, walking, speaking, and living independently. The difference between these two stories is not luck. It is vigilance. The message is simple. Never dismiss sudden weakness, numbness, speech changes, vision loss, severe headache, or confusion. Never tell yourself it can wait until morning or after breakfast. Every minute matters. Drink water upon waking. Take your time when rising from bed. Avoid heavy exertion before your body has warmed up. Protect yourself from extreme temperature shifts. These small choices may save your independence, your memory, and your life. Your body still remembers how to heal, even after decades of stress. The brain responds to care. The heart steadies with attention, and blood vessels recover when you choose wisely. It is never too late to change. Share this knowledge with your loved ones. Talk about it at the breakfast table. Place a glass of water by your bedside. Remind your spouse or parent to act fast if symptoms appear. Together, we can prevent needless tragedies. Now, I would love to hear from you. Take a moment to reflect and share one thing you have learned and plan to apply in your own life. If you found this video helpful, comment 1. If not, comment 0. And do not forget to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss another health tip designed to keep your brain strong, your body resilient, and your future secure.